Welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. How you doing? Stephan A. Koskinas surely had no idea when he wrote his book that he would not live to talk about it. The title, Everything I Want to Tell My Kids About Business, but I'll be dead by the time they ask. His daughter Caroline joins us. Caroline, I'm sure your dad is so proud that you got his book published and you're promoting it, but the irony of that title, what happened?
Well, so this was actually, he passed away in 2018. It took me a long time to pull the trigger on finalizing the book. I mean, he was like ready to hit submit. He had prostate cancer, and actually we didn't even know that he was sick. And it was like a sudden, he passed away. Like when we got the call, it was like within a week later he had passed away. So, it was all kind of a shock. And, I was debating on the cover of his book, he felt strongly about it, but like getting feedback from my family and, his family, I thought we need to change it. And I wanted to do right by him and honor him, but I felt like needed to make a change to the cover. Anyway, it just took me a long time to get this done. So finally, almost 8 years later, we're getting it published.
And you've got a picture of a New York City taxi cab, and it says, everything I want to tell my kids about business, but I'll be dead by the time they ask.
Isn't that ironic?
So ironic.
Yeah.
But he sounds like he was an extremely successful guy, according to his synopsis, and he wanted to share all of the things that he did so that his children would be successful, particularly the taxi cab story, because he was a cab driver, evidently, and everybody loved that part of the story.
Yeah, it's the best part. Yeah, he drove a cab while he put himself through business school at Columbia in New York City, back in the 70s when New York was, a very interesting place back then. And he had fascinating stories. And I thought it was really cool that he tied it to business principles. And he, I guess back when he started writing this, we were young enough that we were kind of closed-minded to all of his input and feedback. So he talks about style flexing in the book. So I guess he kind of style flexed with us and, put pen to the paper and figured if we weren't going to listen, at that point, he could write it all down. And when we were, mature and older, which we are now, we could have the advice that he had, written down. So it's an interesting principle.
What is style flexing?
Like, understanding who you're working with and how to reach them. So some people, everybody has a different way of being reached. Some people, you want to talk to directly. Some people, you want to write something to them, let them think about it and then, reflect on it, and then they can take action. So meaning you reach everybody in a different way. And like in business, he talks about style flexing. Like if you're working with a boss and, you need to understand their style and how they think and how they do things. And, you need to learn to adapt to them, and not everybody's the same. So you can't communicate with everyone the same and handle everybody the same way. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes so much sense, and something I wish I knew about when I was coming up, but too late now.
Yeah, well, you probably do that naturally.
He went from taxi driver to, it sounded like he rose through the ranks pretty quickly.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he started out in, in banking in New York, and that's when he realized, as he was going to move through the ranks, that he needed to change his skill set, and it wasn't just do this, do that. It was, he needed to think more analytically and learn how to navigate the ranks of a company and the, hierarchy of dealing with different people and personalities and stuff. And, he was always analytical. So he took a good look at everything and figured out how to make it work and, work with different people. So.
And he wound up where?
Well, he went through different iterations of jobs, but essentially he was a CEO of many different companies, and he enjoyed a challenge. So he took over a lot of either new companies or struggling companies and worked to turn them around. So, he did it through a variety of different businesses, and he went and started in New Hampshire and then Rochester, New York, which is where I grew up. And then he was down in Tennessee for the last part of his career.
And how many kids did he have?
Two, my brother, I have an older brother and myself.
And did you eventually end up listening to him?
Yeah, you know what? He had so many different mottos and thoughts that always go through my head. And, like I said, that we weren't open to when you're a kid, you don't always listen to your parents, but things that he said, actually, one of his big things is that, when you say things to your kids, they go into the subconscious, and, it's kind of how you reflect on yourself and how you see yourself as you go through life. And a lot of the stuff that, I firmly believe in that. And I feel like, he used to make us say that we're a winner at dinner. And I used to always refuse to say it would, I was young and obnoxious. And I was like, I won't say I'm a winner. And he would always tell us that and say it. And, I think it did lead to having confidence and different things throughout, life that I guess when you tell somebody over and over again, it does go to your subconscious. And anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things that he had talked to me about that I believe. So he was wise.
He was a graduate of Columbia.
Yes.
As a graduate of Columbia, could you go back to Columbia and do a book signing?
His goal was to reach out to professors to see if they could use this book in their business school classes.
Okay.
So that was his track that he wanted to take. So, I got to figure out now that he's gone, how we approach marketing this book. But, starting with Columbia is probably a good place given that it's his alma mater. And he actually retired from business and started a cattle farm. He had 500 acres down in Tennessee.
I'll bet you people in Tennessee, I bet wherever he lived, people know who he was. He sounds like he was that kind of guy.
Yeah, he was definitely fascinating.
That is part of the story, that he left this legacy.
I know.
And as his daughter, you're taking this on. There's something to be said for that. People respond to that.
I agree.
You're doing a really beautiful thing for him.
Yeah. No, it is. It's sadly, the title of the book came true, but it is kind of a cool thing that now we get to honor him with this book, So yeah, we definitely need to figure out how to, Rochester, New York is probably one of his biggest places where it was where he lived the longest and did business. So probably maybe try and go there and see what we can do to market the book, and maybe New Jersey, where his family, where he's from.
Be interesting to see how you make out. What are you going to do now? Are you ever going to write, or are you just this is going to be your project?
I don't know. We'll see. I think probably like him, I'm also he was intense in what he did, and I'm intense in what I do. And, probably down the road when I have more time, I could definitely feel like it's nice to reflect on paper, and it does reach people in a different way than speaking to them.
Yeah. Stephan A. Koskinas, author of Everything I Want to Tell My Kids About Business, But I'll Be Dead by the Time They Ask. And you are his daughter, Caroline?
Yes.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and the conversation.
Sometimes you find yourself in a situation that makes you wonder, what would happen if? And in Larry Winter's case, he didn't start writing till he met a guy named Billy. So you filled in the fictional details of his life and then published a book entitled Billy. So tell me how you met Billy, Larry.
I was driving truck through the southern states, and I was pulled into a way station in the early hours of the morning, I guess about 4 o'clock, something like that. And as I walked in to fill out the paperwork, in their station, the highway patrol cars had somebody pulled over, and they marched this young fella into the station and told him to sit at a table in the break room. And come to find out, he didn't have a driver's license, and he had taken his dad's pickup, disassembled the aluminum bleachers at the high school, and was going to scrap them. Billy was about 30 years old, late 20s, but he was mentally impaired. And they sat him on the chair there in the break room where I could see him and he could see me. And he just gave me this big grin, like, here we go again. I don't think he realized that what he'd done was actually wrong. And something just tapped me on the shoulder and says, you know what? You got to do your best to write a story about this.
At that point, you didn't know anything about this guy.
I knew absolutely nothing about him other than he looked like a very nice young fella. He stunk bad of BO, but he looked like a very nice young fella that just was down on his luck when it come to the mental capacity.
What state were you in?
Well, I'm just going to tell you it was one of the deep south southern states, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, that neck of the woods.
Okay. And you ended up in a break room with him?
No, I was standing at their service counter, but
Okay.
I could see the break room.
How did you get to know him?
I didn't get to know him. We didn't even have a word with each other. It was just the look on his face when he looked at me with a big toothy smile, kind of put his hands up in the air as if to say, here we go again. So it was not his first time in trouble, because he had an ankle locator and several of the officers knew him. The officer that brought him into the station happened to be a personal friend of him and his parents. That much I found out kind of by eavesdropping. The officer that ran the station didn't like him at all. He was sort of a racist fella.
Where did you come up with this story that you wrote?
Billy came about as a story. I put myself in his shoes as much as I could, and I said, what would it be like to be this young fella? And of course, the first part of our meeting, when I first met him or saw him there in the station, that was easy to do. I hopped back in the truck and I just engraved that part in my mind. But then I said, what would it be like to live this life being mentally impaired and try to stay out of trouble, but you got one officer that is a very good friend of yours, and he was like a big babysitter is what this one state cop, the way he kind of looked out for Billy. And it was just kind of put myself in his place. I have no idea. The rest of the book after that very beginning is just my made-up fiction as to how I think Billy may have lived or wanted to live. I'm not sure. But, the rest of the book is fiction. The first few paragraphs are factual.
So tell me about the story.
Well, we had our meeting there at the way station, and then the trucker, drove off, and Billy was taken to jail. And he'd been in jail several times, but it was nothing new to him. He got in trouble because his scrap metal collecting was always getting him in trouble. He'd steal things or disassemble things that weren't meant to be scrapped, and he would take them to a wrecking yard or scrap yard, and eventually caught up with him. He'd been in trouble enough times that the DA wanted to send him to a state institution. And here again, Big T, the state cop that was his friend, would talk to the DA and get him out of trouble. Finally, he signed papers to have Billy come live with him.
Well, you say that the boys got caught with parts, and
Right.
the police came, and his friend ran off, and the cops beat Billy.
Right. As a young boy, Billy and a friend had been out at night collecting scrap metal. They had a little wagon or something with them, and somebody caught them. They were behind an auto parts store loading parts up that they thought were to go in the trash. And they threw them in a shopping cart, and somebody called the police about it. And before they could get out of there, Billy's young friend ran off, and Billy got caught holding the bag. And 6 of these racist police just beat the living hell out of Billy and left him lying in the trash. And he was found the next morning by a garbage truck driver. It was a tough night for Billy.
But he recovers, and what's interesting is that this person who beat him comes back into his life.
Oh, yeah, Officer Mark Hansen. He was one of those that he was probably the most racist of all the police that beat Billy that night. He had tried to kick Billy's teeth out, never succeeded. But years later, his conscience kept bothering him about that night. He had changed so much. His wife left him. He started hitting the bottle really hard. And about 15 years after the incident, he finally decided the only way to make himself right is to ask Billy to forgive him. So that's what he did. He went and looked up Billy and asked Billy, he says, "Will you forgive me for that night?" And Billy says, "I can't forgive you." He says, "Well, why not?" And he says, "'Cause I already forgave you the moment the beating was over." Billy was very, very Christian, and he lived by the Bible and its teachings. And there were a lot of conflicts because of his mental condition, but Billy was an all right, nice, all around good person.
Larry, how did you feel when you finally wrote this all down and decided to get it published?
Well, mostly it was hoping that I just hadn't wasted my time. I did send the manuscript to a couple people to find out if it was worth, looking into getting it published. And one of our pastors at church sent me a 2-page letter saying I did pretty good. So I decided I'd wanted to make sure it wasn't too racist. Because the racism is mostly at the beginning with these bad cops. And then as relationships are formed between the whites and the blacks, this racism dissolves. It goes away. Everybody's equal after that. So how did I feel? I felt really good being told that the story was worth getting published, yes.
Larry, are you going to take this book to your church and do a signing?
I have given a copy to each of the pastors.
It's a beautiful story, and I'm sure that there's people who need to hear it.
I enjoyed writing it. I'll say that was probably the greatest satisfaction of the whole thing, was just writing it as if I was one of the characters in the book. And, that was very much worth it to me.
That's awesome. Are you going to keep writing?
I've got my second book in the works.
Okay.
It's like Billy took 4 years. So we'll see. The next book is called Juvenile Delinquent, and is not really about a juvenile delinquent, but a young lady had been in child protective services, and she referred to herself as a juvenile delinquent. So she's actually a very nice young lady.
I wish you the best of luck. I hope you get it finished.
I'm working on it.
You are Larry Winter, author of Billy. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure doing the interview.
Kelly Cravotta runs a home care service company. She's a mother of 4, and now she's a published author. She has a lot of creative energy and manages to find time to write no matter what. By 2022, she had several unfinished stories, so she decided to finish 2. One of them is the book we're talking about today. It is entitled Mira.
So Mira was the one that was technically my second one to be published, and it was a PA publishing company. So I was like, that's awesome. Maybe that's like a sign. I published them. I think it was a summer. I didn't have a job. I was looking for another one, and I wasn't rushing into it. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I should finish these. I need to finish these. And then once I finished them, I was like, hey, maybe I'll send them to these 2 publishers. And if anything happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, like, I'll just keep writing. And then those were the start. Yeah, that was the start of my, the publishing endeavor. But I feel like I'm still always writing and thinking of things. Like, I have 2 more that are complete, and then 1 more that 2 more that I'm technically writing. So I feel like it's always something I'm still doing, even though my life is chaos. I'm still doing it because it gives me that sense of just peace.
All right. So reading from your synopsis, Mira is in a kingdom plagued by darkness, poverty, and unrest. A long-buried royal secret begins to stir. I mean, where did that come from?
Honestly, I feel like either I read books or I watch movies, and then it's almost like yeah, that's cool, but what happens if, and then you kind of branch from there, or I don't know, I want to say, but it's going to sound weird, but it's almost like, okay, you read a page and then you turn the page well, I have an idea, or I could do an idea of this. So, I mean, it probably stirred from me watching a show or finishing a book that was talking about, a prince and a princess and their story. And I was like, well, actually, I think I have another twist to a story that I could tell. And then I just started writing, and I feel like Mira is definitely a unique story, but I feel like a lot of things that the character goes through is a lot that all of us go through. You want to be strong, or you want to show that you can do it. But then if you do it, almost oh, well, she might be stuck up. She thinks she's better than everybody. And then in the twist of the story, it's okay, well, she is found, but she could also lead to danger because she's so powerful. So I feel like I try putting what we deal with in real life into any of the fantasy stories that I do, but I also want there to be a connection, because I love that. I love when there's always a connection that you can make with a story.
What kind of books do you read? Do you read a lot of fantasy?
Oh, no. I honestly never really read fantasy, just the love stories. And then she was a new author a couple of years ago. She just came out. Alex Alster, I want to say. Aster.
Yes.
But she was on for the very first time. I feel like she was on, I want to say, Kelly Clarkson. And her story was a very unique, fantasy. And I was like, oh, will people like that? I didn't think people really were like that or into that. And she honestly, I was like, you know what, if I hear about her again, or she makes it big, I'll continue to write my fantasy stuff, or I'll finish it. And I swear the summer of 2022, somehow I found her somewhere, whether it was a TikTok or Instagram. And she was saying how she finished her 3rd book and they're making it a movie. And I was like, stop it. I was like, all right, this is my sign, I guess.
Your synopsis is so Mira is nothing more than legend or phantom whispered about in the shadows of royal bloodlines. Her fate is shrouded in mystery, her destiny bound to danger, death, deceit, or hope. Only she can choose the path she will walk. I mean, geez. Will she remain hidden, cloaked in secrecy to preserve a fragile peace, or will she rise, risking everything to embrace her true self? What's going on here?
I mean, she's definitely, she can find out her powers and she can expose it. But then again, like, you do that, what? Envy comes, jealousy comes, more danger comes. So she tries to figure out, should she act more human, do more things humanly, or should she use her magic? And then I like it because the family is also tied into, or the king, his prince, like the family is tied into her decisions as well, because she ultimately, her goal is to keep the king safe. So even if they would want her to use her powers or show who she is, it's not that easy. She has to think of it as, okay, well, if I do show my powers, if I show even a little bit of who I am and expose who I am, I'm ultimately making everybody in danger who I'm supposed to be keeping safe. So it's like should she do this? Should she not? And then how should she do it? And I feel like through the whole story, that's what she tries to, she does use her magic bits and pieces of it and may regret it. And then sometimes she's happy about it, but she's never for sure until the moment where she's like, okay, I have to choose. Am I showing myself and saving everybody, or like what is going to happen?
Where is she? Like, is she in a kingdom? She's guarding, you say, a king.
Well, I kind of didn't expose all of that. That's more for the second book of like where all of this kind of comes from. But the story that the royals are told is Amira comes to you. The king has to decide, like a lot of kings kill her because she is, old, ragged. She almost looks like a creature when she first approaches a king. And they determine whether she lives or they die. And then the kings that give them the chance, that ultimately let them live, they're revealed, they're given a mirror. And then from there, they know through stories that they keep quiet, like a mirror changes everything. They're powerful, they're magical, they will do whatever they can for their king. And this king has a heart. And I feel like through the journey, it's not just about him. It does like bring his sons along and everything that's happening with the kingdom, but she is still tethered to him. So she always focuses on him and what he wants, but also trying to keep him alive. It's ultimately nature somehow gives her to this kingdom or this king, but then it doesn't say anything else. Like that's all technically for like the second book of like where they come from. Like, there's little bits and pieces of it. She does like hear other Mira that were there, but there's no other Mira but her at that moment. There's no other ones that are alive. She's the only one.
The name of your book is Mira.
Yes.
But you refer to her as Amira.
Yes.
Why?
Honestly, I feel like the story and the purpose of her, I wanted to be symbolic. So like, she's just called Mira because that's what she says her name is, but that is also like the creature or the being that she is. And they're known for who they are, but each one of them can be different. Each one of them, some can be evil, some can be good. But I wanted it just to say Mira because, again, like as she uncovers who she is and like the choice that she makes in the first book, the second reveals there's so many of them that are like, they instantly are evil. They instantly want to like kill everybody because that's what their king wants. They're almost like a instrument to their king, but that's not necessarily what they are. They choose to be either good or evil.
How do you talk about this?
It's so hard. As a nurse, I like talk to everybody. I can talk to a wall. I talk, and I feel like with my writing, it is probably one of the hardest things, just because I have what's on paper, I want to tell people like, oh my gosh, this book is definitely, it's unique. It's about fantasy, but there's so many like layers of what the story is underneath. And I feel like as I talk to people about it, it's almost like I'm like, yes, but then there's this and there's this. And I call it swirling. Like thinking of one thing or talking of one thing, but then you think of something else and I feel like I need to try to kind of do better. I did a podcast and talked about it, and I feel like I did a couple of things, and I just like give myself little note cards of like the things that make me most excited about the book. I like reached out to my old high school. They have a lot of connections, just to say like, this is what I did in a sense. I did reach out to a couple different coffee shops for people being interested in the book, but also just like hey, I will come here and do this if you are interested kind of thing.
Well, you got to think about, what makes it relatable. What is the essence of the story? What is the essence of this character? What is like, sum it up in as few words as possible?
I would say the only thing she wants to do is keep her kingdom safe. And there's everything that's going on, and she's trying to decipher what to do, but ultimately there's one goal. So focus on that one goal and everything else kind of comes into place.
Okay.
Being strong, thinking with your heart, trying to be who you are, even if you can't be all of what you are, like just remain strong and keep going and believe in yourself, I think.
All right. You are Kelly Cravotta, author of Mira. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time.
When your friends let you down and you're deceived by a woman you truly love, it's an unbearable heartache. For Bruno N. Koffi, it meant years of anguish before he discovered the healing power of writing. It led to the publication of his first book entitled The Devil Woman from Africa. Dr. Koffi, you say you're not the only one who's migrated from the Ivory Coast to go through exactly what you went through.
It does happen a lot, and it's talked about in social media, and it was a personal experience, a big deception by best friends and girlfriends, and after that the trauma was so deep that the only way I could release it was to write. Initially I was kind of pushing it away, and friends kept calling me, look, if you don't put this in writing down somewhere, nobody will know it happened. You're still going to suffer from it. So I did sit and started writing. And obviously, it did release a lot of stress. My blood pressure was high for so many years after finishing the book. As per magic, my blood pressure dropped like it's been normal since.
So writing became medically necessary for you?
Yes, for me it was. Yep.
How long ago did this happen?
Oh, some 20 years ago, but it was kind of, talked about among friends and people close to me, and people who witnessed it directly. So the pain never went away because there were certain things that I wasn't able to talk about. There were questions that I wasn't able to ask, the answers that were never provided to me. Friends that I had helped a lot, that had used me so much that I thought our friendship was more of like a brotherhood, that, our kids will grow up and play together, we go visit this parent, and so I never had to ask the ones who inflicted the pain on me questions, and so I never had the answers, so I kept it engraved in myself. So even though it happened a long time ago, it took me this while to kind of decide to write, to see what the healing process would be.
I mean, it's heartbreaking to read your synopsis. You were really in love with this girl, and you went through a lot to get to America, and then you went through a lot to try to get her to America.
Yeah, exact. And since it's a book, I mean, you can say everything in it, so you don't penalize yourself with some of the things that you have put in writing. So what could be put in paper, in writing, for everyone to safely read without going into the details of, your stay or your getting here. So that was maybe, I would say, not the tippy tip, but that's the, like the top tier the bottom two tiers could not be talked about. But yeah, so even though it's not the whole full story told, because some details you can, put them in writing and have everyone read it. So yeah.
Was she prostituting herself? What was the deal with all of these other men on the side?
I don't know if it was something that she used to control men or to feel proud about. She was very beautiful physically, but the mental, the moral wasn't there. So, and she had relied so much on her physical beauty that she thought she could get away with everything. Personally, I didn't know about all the affairs and the things going on. As soon as I learned about it, before I even learned, I said, I don't know what's going on, but if you have ever been doing this, prepare yourself to leave whatever you want to go. I don't care. So knowing that we had a similar background when we got to know each other, like the first few days, I'm like, okay, this is something that is familiar to me. But after I gave her the ultimatum not to come to my place anymore, I didn't see her, but life wasn't easy for her. She started realizing how tough it was in America, to the point where she even I think, took the bus back to my place, but she couldn't sit and explain to me what my friends or so-called friend had said about me, how they had destroyed me. She just stood there. She knocked at the door of the apartment. I opened it. She stood there for a few minutes, maybe thinking her beauty will blow my mind again. I just looked at her. After maybe 5 minutes, she left. But things didn't go well for her, to the point where her mom, she ended up inviting her mom over. And her mom, looking at things, and she found my number. She called me. She said she needed $100 in this country, just $100, because the girl had kicked her own mom out of her apartment for bringing in so many men, because the only way she could now afford apartment and you know uh, living was by going the
Yeah.
easy way. And for her, it was just physical attraction, pay me.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what happened to her.
Did your friends know what she was doing to you?
Oh yeah, my friends knew that. My best friend and his wife are the one. When she arrived, I think it was either the first night or the second night. I wasn't home, so they came to pick her up, and she had a job where my friend's wife was working. And before her arrival here, a friend of mine used to stay with me, and the married friend had, and his wife had asked my friend who stayed with me to bring them her picture. So when they saw a picture, they had concocted to hook her up with the friend's wife boss. So before she even got here, they had a better plan. So my friend, I realized later, I learned about what was going on in my own apartment through a third person that we both knew, that determined that the person I called friend wasn't actually a friend. It was an enemy. It was a snake in the grass. A week later or so, I lost my job, and that girl, she was singing that I lost my job because I had kicked her out. I went to my friend's house, confiding in him and his wife to help me because I was having trouble with this girl, not knowing that they were the ones who had set her off. She had nothing to say. And as I was explaining that to them, my friend's wife said, "Oh, I just got a position as a supervisor." And click, I'm like, "Oh, she came the next day. She went to work with you. Now you are a supervisor, something that you had been talking about for 3, 4 years. All of a sudden, in 6 months, you are a supervisor." I had to look deeper into this. So the next day, I went to their job and confronted the owner of the McDonald's where they worked. And his first question to me was, "Do you have any videos?" That confirmed that something was going on.
Wow.
So I was ready to tolerate and pardon everything that had happened because that friend of mine is of low moral character. But I thought because he had a wife and kid, when his wife was pregnant, I was the one who bought the cradle. I stayed with him for what, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks. He concocted something. I gave him 500. I mean, it was a bunch of things. I thought it was just about money, so I didn't pay attention to that side of him. But when I realized they had insulted me to the highest degree of kind of prostituting or selling who I was considering as my wife for a promotion.
Are you emotionally able to talk about your book?
Yeah, I do. I do talk about it. I have made some videos on TikTok. I have been called by influencers to talk about it.
Well, for your sake, I hope this whole experience helps you continue to move forward and, serve as a warning to others. Thank you so much, Dr. Bruno N. Koffi, author of The Devil Woman from Africa.
All right, thank you.
Latiesha George began visualizing her book a few years ago, but between being a wife, mom, consultant, and managing chickens on her Georgia farm, it took a couple of years before she finally started writing her series entitled Saltwater Saints. Latiesha, let's start with your inspiration.
So I have some personal experience with the whole cruise culture. And so what really came about this book is one, my interest in human behavior, belief systems. And when I say belief systems, even more specifically around cult belief systems, and just wrapping that all into my personal connection to the cruise culture really helped shape the story. Saltwater Saints, and that's the debut of the series. It, in my opinion, is a psychological thriller. And for book one, it's set on a luxury cruise called the Elysium. And there is a true crime podcaster. Her name's Riley Cross. And she's actually on the cruise as a guest, just someone who's booking a cruise looking to escape and disconnect. But then it ends up turning into where she's investigating this mysterious disappearance of someone at sea while on the cruise, and she ends up uncovering a hidden cult. And this hidden cult is among the actual cruise crew members.
What is a cruise culture? What do you mean by that?
So my mother-in-law, my husband's side of the family, they are really into cruise life. So when I say cruise life, meaning, but the whole goal is to be on this floating city, essentially, meaning that, typically you, one, have to be comfortable socializing and being around others, because once you're on a cruise, and depending on which cruise you're on, they want you to mix and mingle. They want you to socialize. The whole thing is built for you to do that. They even have hosts, someone who actually hosts your entire cruise experience. So you're getting familiar with a specific name or voice that's on the speaker system, right? They're creating this whole environment for you, but it's really curated and intentional at the same time. And so that's what I mean by cruise culture, down to how you can walk into your room and you're expecting that surprise towel animal that's folded into a swan or a teddy bear, you can imagine. So when I say cruise culture, it's just that if someone goes on a cruise more than once, you kind of have the expectations of what you can expect your cruise to look like, because the experience is very similar. Everything is timed, orchestrated, scheduled, even though it may not seem like it from a guest experience, but everything is scheduled and planned down to a T, down to the food, everything.
Does this culture help the true crime podcaster uncover clues?
Yes and no, because her typical true crime podcasting doesn't really involve that many cruise ship disappearances or, those type of investigations. So, which is why she booked a cruise, because she didn't think that this would end up turning into like a work environment for her. This is all new to her from the scene of where this is all taking place, but the understandings and the mindset of those who partake in crime, then she understands that culture.
What's this cult?
So yes, the Tidebound is what they call themselves. And the Tidebound, they have their certain beliefs, but the one that sits at the core of it all is that the ocean, which they treat as like the mother, this is who we provide sacrifices to. And when we provide sacrifices, it's very important that the sacrifices don't occur on land, because it's almost as if it's an offering to the ocean. It's almost like a cleansing as well. And so the Tidebound, they consist of crew members are from all over the world. And there's also rituals and initiations that take place because they actually mark their individuals that they're targeting. And when I say mark, so again, this goes back to the cruise culture. So if you've ever been on a cruise, there may be, you're sitting at a bar getting a drink and they put these nice, lovely colored umbrellas in your drink. That color, if you get a certain color, that could mark you. And the way your napkin may be folded or placed at your table could also mark you. Because one thing that's important on a cruise is crew members can access your room at any time. And so just the Tidebound being able to mark their targets for who they want to sacrifice and provide as an offering and a cleansing to the ocean, then that's what their main goal is. And so Riley, she happens to stumble across this cult. There is a leader there, and I won't give it away as to who that is. But it really also defines and makes things a little bit more eerie once it is uncovered who is the leader, because then you feel like, okay, there really is no escape, right? Because you're in the middle of an ocean.
Right.
And so if something happens when you're in these open international waters, such as, let's say, a man overboard, what I also learned through personal experience, because that actually happened, the cruise ships, they have their own procedures and protocols navigating a certain radius of waters wherever the incident may have occurred to search, right? But they also have thousands of guests who paid money for this cruise, and selfishly enough, they don't want their cruise impacted, right? So the show must go on, so they can't stay there forever. So the cult members, they know the inner workings. They have access to certain places in the cruise ship that others can't access. So it's easy to almost, get away with things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they leverage all of these things to their advantage, to where, they haven't ever been caught or noticed until now.
So does Riley wrap this case up and move on to another case in the series, or?
Oh, no. There is a quick hang, because the real thing that's important about this book is it's under 100 pages. And so you get everything you need, but then it gives you more to where it's like, okay, I need to move in book one, because now this is leaving me with some questions, right? Everything that happens on this cruise ship from the moment she touches off of it is book one. But because you're going to find that some things are still occurring, and it almost leaves you like, so what's going to happen next now that they know and she knows? Everybody is in the know of what's happening, right? And so as you can imagine, you get off one cruise, but because you're finding things out and you don't want people to get away with it, you can easily just book another cruise. Now she's more intentional about going after them and exposing them.
All right. So are you out talking about this book?
So there's something called Bookstagram on Instagram.
Bookstagram.
Bookstagram, there's a whole community of Bookstagrammers, and that's what they call themselves. And it's Bookstagram, and it's all people who love everything books, whether they review books, they provide recommendations, just even open discussion about books, you name it. And so I've been really more intentional in connecting with that community because through the book community, I've learned about Goodreads and StoryGraph as popular platforms for providing reviews, but also hosting giveaways as well. So I've been doing a lot of giveaways just to gain interest and momentum in the book. But fun fact about the book is that, and why I said me being a visual, is that the book actually started off as, in my mind, a limited TV series or movie. But obviously having to write it out, storyboard it, you name it, I ended up having the manuscript done first. So I was like, well, I'll pivot to book first. But when reading the book, you feel like you're watching a movie and it's touching all of your senses. It's explaining things. So you feel like you're in it.
It's all up from here, Latiesha. That's a great resource for our listeners.
Thank you.
All right. You are Latiesha George, author of Saltwater Saints. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.